This demonstration video will cover Malwarebytes' endpoint protection product, that is Malwarebytes' EPP solution. Included in this product, and part of the consideration for this demonstration, is Malwarebytes' endpoint protection and response, which is Malwarebytes' EDR solution. Here we detail the architecture of both the Malwarebytes endpoint protection and Malwarebytes endpoint protection and response products. The console is standard with features to configure policies, group endpoints, view historical data, create reports, etc. It supports role-based access control so that users on an account can be granted limited scope and privilege. From a Windows endpoint point of view, the endpoint software monitors all running processes, sending relevant events to the EDR detection backend. In order to reduce event volume, to speed up detection processing, each endpoint goes through a short learning period where the EPR agent takes note of common behaviors and excludes those from the event stream. As of today, EPR is supported on Windows only. Malwarebytes Cloud System is 3 separate SaaS systems that provide the following functions. The Malwarebytes Cloud backend hosts the multi-tenant database with REST APIs that allow for configuration changes, sending commands to the endpoint, monitoring of endpoint statuses, and access to historical data. The Detection Data Store is a big data system that stores all detections, events, and quarantine items for all endpoints, Windows and Mac, that are running IR, EP, and EPR. This data is cataloged, indexed, and aggregated for quick access. Currently, the data is retained indefinitely, but we're implementing retention policies that are configurable by the customer. The EDR detection system is also based on big data technologies, built to ingest billions of events daily. The detection rules are run against the event stream in real time. After a detection is triggered, all the events from that particular endpoint are searched in order to create a graphical timeline of the process that created the detection. The resulting detection, metadata, and process graph are immediately sent to the detection data store, where they can be queried or displayed in the console. In this segment, I'll demonstrate how role-based access control is implemented. We've made role-based access control extremely easy, enabling IT and security teams to rapidly protect console access and data with the appropriate role according to the user's assigned groups. Users can be assigned one of 3 roles: superadmin, administrator, and read-only. These roles satisfy the majority of business use cases. Superadmin users have full access to all groups and features throughout the console. Administrators have full read and edit access to any groups that they're assigned. They cannot edit global or system-wide settings. Read-only users can view all information within the console per their group-level access. They can generate reports and opt in to receive email notifications. However, they cannot make any changes in the console, nor are they authorized to use the discovery and deployment tool. In this use case, we have an enterprise with offices around the globe, specifically Asia, Europe, and North America. Each continent appears as the top-level group, with its respective offices contained in subgroups. Janssen, who provides IT support for offices in North America only, needs the ability to manage endpoints in Canada, Mexico, and the United States. It's important that he has access to groups in these regions only. He should not see endpoints or groups for anywhere else. Using role-based access control, we'll configure Janssen's account with the administrator role. We'll also restrict his group access so he can only view groups that he's responsible for managing. By selecting North America, this will give him access to that group, including all child groups, i.e. Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Now that we've made changes to Janssen's account, let's see how the system appears when he logs in. After logging in as Janssen, let's navigate to the Groups page. Notice that he has administrator access to groups only within his purview. Role-based access control has restricted the access accordingly. On a side note, it's worth mentioning that removing access to groups also prevents users from seeing any information related to endpoints assigned to such groups. They will not appear in the console, nor will they appear in the reports that the users generate. In this segment, I'll demonstrate how Malwarebytes Cloud integrates with multi-factor authentication, also known as MFA. MFA integration is accomplished by configuring the Cloud Console to work in conjunction with Single Sign-On, or SSO, via your identity provider, IDP, provided that users are forced to use MFA as part of the SSO process flow in the IDP's configuration. Malwarebytes SSO implementation supports IDPs that use SAML 2.0 authentication protocols, such as Okta, OneLogon, ADSF, Azure, and Google. In this demonstration, I'll be using Okta as our IDP. First, we'll log into the console and go to the Single Sign-On settings page. Let's enable SSO and also enable Service Provider Initiated SSO mode for greater security. We pre-configured this environment to work with Okta, as you can see by the metadata XML, along with the service provider details towards the bottom. Here we can see that Malwarebytes Cloud has been assigned to the user. Now that SSO is enabled, let's log out and switch to Okta. More importantly, we can see that MFA is required in their IDP settings. In this case, we've configured to use the Okta Verify app along with SMS. Now let's go to http://cloud.malwarebytes.com and authenticate. When we click Next, pay extra close attention to the URL in the browser address bar, because this happens rather fast. We were immediately taken to the IDP's authentication page. After entering the password, MFA is now required, Okta Verify or SMS. So let's use SMS. Since Okta accepted the credentials and the multi-factor authentication step is complete, it's fulfilled the SAML request and redirected the user into Malwarebytes Cloud. Those are all the steps that are required for solicited SSO with multi-factor authentication. Optionally, the console also supports using SSO in unsolicited mode. This essentially means that authorized users can only access the Cloud Console via an application icon in their IDP dashboard. It's worth noting that during authentication, the same process workflow takes place on the back end as well. In this section, we'll demonstrate how an administrator would find unprotected clients in their fleet of computers. Download the Discovery and Deployment tool from Malwarebytes Cloud to your Windows endpoint. Launch the program by clicking on the executable. This application does not need to be permanently installed in the endpoint. It's only used for administration. Enter the same credentials that were used to log into the Cloud Console. To scan your network, click Scan Network on the left. Enter your network admin credentials and then press Scan. Active Directory is used to populate the list of endpoints. Each endpoint shows whether or not the Malwarebytes Endpoint Protection Agent is installed. Now I will install the endpoint agent on Windows 10 EP1, and after a few seconds, the update status appears. In this example, we'll demonstrate the ability for Malwarebytes endpoint agent to recover from potentially corrupt installation or an installation that requires a restart to complete. We'll start by looking at a machine that could not finish installing all portions of the Malwarebytes endpoint agent. As you can see, this machine has a reboot needed status set along with some other statuses in the Malwarebytes console. Let's switch over now to the policy settings. We can see in the policy settings that all endpoint interface options are turned off, and the administrator has not allowed the user to reboot the machine on their own. By going back to the Managed Endpoints section, we're able to select the Reboot Status icon. Let's dive a little further into those available options. The administrator is able to schedule the reboot up to 480 minutes away and allow the end user to postpone on their own. An immediate reboot option is also available. A custom message can be typed in to inform the end user of potential action that's about to take place. We'll go ahead and ask to reboot immediately and leave a friendly note. Even though the notifications are hidden, the agent recognizes that an admin has issued a command and informs the user properly with a 60-second warning. Reboot notification commands are now shown on the endpoint agent. In the console, we can see that the status has changed, letting us know a reboot is in progress. And now the machine is rebooted. Note the status requiring reboot is cleared and the installation is fully repaired. In this example, I'll demonstrate all of the configuration toggles and tuning options focused around non-signature based detection mechanisms available in the Malwarebytes Cloud Console. Let's dive into some policy settings. We'll switch over to the Windows Settings tab, as our Mac agent doesn't currently support non-signature based detections. In the Settings tab, notice the following toggles: Anomalous File Detection, which utilizes machine learning; Web Protection, which protects users and applications by blocking access to and from Internet addresses, which are known or suspected of engaging in malicious activity; Exploit Protection, which uses multiple protection layers to guard against attempted exploits of vulnerabilities in legitimate applications; Behavior Protection, which provides protection against both known and unknown malware threats by analyzing application behavior. Our exploit protection technology additionally allows whitelisting applications by selecting Manage Protected Applications. Administrators can click Add to add additional applications to be whitelisted. Others allows complete customization. If we go back to the Policy Settings page and look at Exploit Protection again, you'll notice another option, Advanced Settings. By selecting this option, the admin has the ability to gain full control over multiple layers utilized in exploit protection. Advanced Memory Protection is also provided by Malwarebytes, in addition to Application Behavior Protection, and Java Protection as well. Malwarebytes also offers an EDR solution, which enables the administrator to toggle on and configure suspicious activity monitoring. Aggressive mode is available to lower the threshold of when a file should be uploaded for sandbox analysis, along with other options shown, such as ransomware rollback and endpoint isolation. Let's now switch over to the Exclusions page and add a new exclusion. As we expand exclusions applied to, we notice all of our protection layers are shown. Switching exclusion type allows the administrators to further control protection layers offered by Malwarebytes. As we change this type, layers are automatically adjusted. Some can be turned on and off, while suspicious activity always remains selected. In this section, I'll demonstrate how an administrator would disable detection methods that are causing a false positive for a specific application. Exclusion page under Settings is shown. On the exclusion page, there are two exclusions already set up. The top one is a global exclusion, which applies to all endpoints regardless of policy. In this case, the default policy and EDR test policy. The second exclusion is a policy level exclusion, or one that applies only to endpoints associated with a specific policy, in this case, EDR. Here you can see if the exclusion is applied globally or at the policy level. By hovering over this icon, the user can see which policy or policies the exclusion is applied to. For each exclusion, a column is available that shows which technology layer that exclusion applies to. Depending on the exclusion type, different technology layers are applied. In this example, the global exclusion is applied to malware protection, ransomware protection, and suspicious activity. In this edit dialog, the user can enable or disable the exclusion, modify it to be either global or at the policy level, change the exclusion type, value, or technology the exclusion is applied to. Supported technology layers are exploit protection, uses multiple protection layers to guard against attempted exploits of vulnerabilities in legitimate applications. Ransomware protection detects and blocks ransomware threats using advanced behavioral analysis. Website protection blocks network traffic from malicious websites and IP addresses. Suspicious activity uses advanced machine learning to identify suspicious processes that require additional review. Deselecting malware protection means that the application is no longer identified as false positive. Once the exclusion is saved, notice that the applied technologies have now been modified. To add a new exclusion, simply press the Add button. This opens a similar dialog box to the one we just saw. In this example, we will create a policy level exclusion and assign it to a specific policy. We set the exclusion type to File by Path and enter the path for the exclusion. Finally, we open the Exclusion Applied To section and make any adjustments. Notice that certain technologies are automatically set based on the exclusion type that was selected. Saving the exclusion will now add it to the exclusion list for the account. Using either global or policy level specific exclusions, the selected application is no longer detected as a false positive. In this section, I'll review all of the options related to optimizing agent performance. Let's go ahead and select an individual policy. The administrator is able to control how often Malwarebytes endpoint agent checks in for updates. A numerical value is accepted and can be configured from minutes to days. By switching to the Settings tab, we're able to configure various scan options. The ability to run rootkit scans by default, scanning within archives, and various detection controls are all available. These allow the administrator to have control over how detailed a scan should be, and in turn improve scan times. Scan priority can be adjusted to allow prioritization of scans over end-user multitasking ability, or vice versa. Real-time protection adjustments allow configuration of what technologies are running on the endpoint. That's a great way to improve agent performance on systems that may not require all protection layers to be running. By allowing adjustment of how Malwarebytes should register itself with the Windows Action Center, the administrator is able to control Windows Defender priority and other features related to the Windows 10 security settings. Customers utilizing our EDR technology, engine aggressiveness and rollback configuration settings allow for more granular control over the agent performance. In this section, I'll be showing how Malwarebytes handles incident response investigation actions and answers the following questions. What was the extent of the breach? What did the hacker or malware do while it's active? And how do we guarantee that remediation is 100% effective? Here we start with the Malwarebytes Cloud Console and an endpoint infected with ransomware. In the Enterprise-Wide Suspicious Activity tab, we see two items related to this endpoint. Selecting a specific suspicious activity, the user is presented with all the relevant details of the threat, including the location of the threat, the process ID, timestamp of the detection, and the rules related to make that decision. In this example, the suspicious activity was detected because of several trigger rules, including deleting shadow copy, registry auto runs, suspicious extension, ransomware activity, and disabled firewall. For additional context, the user can simply click on the specific detection rule to display additional information about the rule, along with the command line that was actually executed. The next section is the threat visualization or process graph. With this view, users can see what activities the malware has done and their interrelationship between processes and spawn child processes. Clicking on each individual node in the process graph provides additional information related to the details of that specific process. Here we click on eCaddy 1623.exe to drill into the specific dropped process. This node provides details related to the specific path, process ID, when the process was spawned, when it was last active, the MD5 hash, its activities, and the command line used to execute it. In this example, the test malware shown has executed several file writes and registry changes that are detailed. Drilling down into these activities, users can see the specific details of what has changed within the files and registry. The registry set values activities shows which registry keys have changed or have been updated by individual software processes. As we progress through the process graph, you can see details for each individual application and/or the processes that have been executed as part of potential malware. Users can take action on each level of the suspicious activity. These actions include isolating the endpoint, preventing the spread of malware infections across the organization, one-click remediation and rollback of that threat, or closing the suspicious activity as a non-threat. From this demonstration, we've shown how a user can understand the details of an incident, what the malware did while active, the available actions to handle the incident, and how the systems can be restored after all threat traces are removed. For the purposes of threat hunting, Malwarebytes uses the MBBR tool. MBBR stands for Malwarebytes Breach Remediation, and it's used for both threat hunting and remediation. The tool is available via the console as a dissolvable command line utility, so I'm going to download it and expect it to show up in my download directory. The command line tool is most typically distributed and executed using the enterprise's system management framework. This self-extracting utility is typically distributed with systems such as Forescout, Tanium, Dell Case, BigFix, or most commonly, SCCM. We see that the MBBR tool includes both Windows and Mac operating system support. For the Windows programs, I'm going to further extract the tool into the directory for use. At this point, I'm going to switch over to an admin command prompt to continue. Since it's a command line tool, we have many different options and settings. I'm going to leave a window open so I can use it for easy reference to the switches. After successful registration, the next thing that we're going to do is update the database with the latest intelligence that's available from the Malwarebytes cloud. But since we're doing threat hunting, it's also possible to load and include custom IOCs in the JSON format as shown here. Here's an example of one that's available to include new IOCs for scanning purposes. What we want to do is include this IOC file in the custom database. We can then list this to confirm that it has been added to the custom database. We can now perform an IOC scan of the endpoint and hunt for potential threats. The MBBR tool generates JSON output. However, most enterprise users will automatically send the results to syslog format in their enterprise SIM. Switching over to the other screen, we see the settings used to specify syslog servers as destinations of the results. Results are also available as a JSON format, as we see listed here. In this section, we'll demonstrate Malwarebytes endpoint protection's ability to be able to detect malicious PowerShell scripts that are part of a macro in a Word document. We can see that when this user attempts to open the Word file and bypass the security warnings given by Office, the document is immediately terminated. It is not deleted as the PowerShell script is used only as an exploit in this type of an attack, and the document contents could be important for future forensics. By going back to the Malwarebytes Cloud Console and selecting the machines that executed the malicious document, We can further dive into the contents of the PowerShell script that attempted to execute on the endpoint. For the purpose of demonstrating threat response through remediation, I'm going to infect two endpoints with ransomware. The reason for using two endpoints is that on the first endpoint, we will respond to the threat by isolating it, and on the second endpoint, we'll remediate it by rolling back encrypted files and other changes to the system. Here are the two endpoints that we're going to be working with. One is named Ketya and the other Robo. We switch over to the machine Robo and execute a ransomware by the name of Akadi. We see documents on the desktop being encrypted as it works its way through the system. We switch over to the second machine, Ketya, to infect the system in the same way. In an uncontrolled environment, this infection is likely to have resulted from lateral movement. I'm going to run the same ransomware, but manually instead. Again, we see the same symptoms of encrypted files and modified desktop wallpaper. Now I'm going to switch back to the main console, and it's important to realize that the reason why the ransomware got executed is because we specifically turned off real-time protection on this policy EDR test. Notice that the real-time protection options have been turned off, allowing the ransomware to execute. On the other hand, suspicious activity monitoring, aka the EDR feature, has been turned on. Also note that within the EDR option, we have enabled rollback of any changes that have occurred to the endpoint. Let's go back to look at the machines that we have just infected. Notice that both of the endpoints have alerts for suspicious activity. We drill into the details for the first endpoint. This is the process graph that traces the execution chain of the ransomware. We can click on each node to get details of the process and execution parameters. We will choose to isolate this endpoint. Note the different types of isolation available. Network isolation blocks network connections. Process isolation blocks processes from starting. And desktop isolation blocks users from interacting with the system. Isolation occurs almost instantaneously, so we're going to switch over very quickly once I click yes. Notice that Computer Robo has been immediately locked, and a customized message is shown to the user to inform them of the event. As we switch over to the console, we notice that the first computer, Robo, shows a lock icon indicating that it has been isolated. Now we want to inspect the second computer, Ketya. Let's assume that we've inspected the threat and decided to perform a remediation. We will confirm the understanding that a reboot may be required to completely remove the threat from the endpoint. As we switch over to the second computer, I'm going to do a directory listing to show traces created and left behind by the ransomware. As part of the remediation process, we would expect all traces of the files to be removed. Let's wait a few more seconds for the remediation to be visible by the rollback of encrypted files. Now we see the rollback occurring in real time, with encrypted files being restored. I'm going to do a directory listing again to confirm that the ransomware traces have been quarantined as well. Notice though that the desktop wallpaper is not being refreshed. This is a function of Windows. If we were to log off and log back into the account, the background wallpaper will be refreshed to show the original image, which has been restored. We've now confirmed that the desktop has been restored. Simultaneously remediating multiple endpoints from the console is not a currently supported feature. However, we will show that using the Malwarebytes RESTful API, we can automate bulk remediation and all operations possible from the console. This is an example of using XL with the embedded Malwarebytes API to remediate multiple computers. Integration of Malwarebytes with other vendor solutions is based on the fact that Malwarebytes has a robust set of RESTful APIs. As a matter of fact, the entire Malwarebytes Cloud Console is written using the same set of RESTful APIs. While many integrations are done by customers and partners, some are developed and supported by Malwarebytes and certified by those partners directly. Examples of these include ServiceNow, Splunk, and Phantom. Here's a quick browse through Malwarebytes apps available on Splunkbase. 3 different apps are available because they are needed to support various use cases. Next, we'll also walk through the integration of Malwarebytes with Phantom, which is an orchestration and automation platform. The Malwarebytes app is available on the Phantom App Store. The app is available and certified along with different actions, and it's distributed along with different playbooks for easy integration. Here, I've created a playbook in Phantom that makes use of the Malwarebytes app as events are consumed within the system. We'll save this playbook with a name. This is the only playbook I have in the system configured to be active. Note that there are currently no events that have been processed, hence success and failed columns show zeros. Next, I'm going to generate 2 events in Phantom. One endpoint is named Femino and the other Ketia. I'm going to send events to indicate that Femino has a medium severity incident and Ketia has a high severity incident. If actions are being taken through the Malwarebytes application, I would expect to see different tasks being created. The way that I'm generating the events is to use some Python scripting. This command will simulate a SIM event received from Firmino that is of medium severity. As the new event is being sent, notice the new entry in the Phantom console. Click to see an action, Scan to Endpoint, has been executed. I now go back to the Malwarebytes console and do a refresh to see that a new task, Threat Scan, has been created through the use of API within the Malwarebytes Phantom app. Next, I generate a high-severity event from Ketya. Our playbook has a workflow where high-severity events will cause Phantom to request an isolation action from Malwarebytes. Refreshing the Phantom console confirms that a new event of high severity has arrived from Ketya. Drilling down into the event confirms that the quarantine or isolation action has been invoked successfully. We refresh the Malwarebytes console to see a new Isolating Endpoints task has been created. Finally, we switch over to Ketya and see that the endpoint has been isolated and locked out with a custom message. Malwarebytes also provides a free Excel API integration add-in. Simply click Endpoint Computers and import the information into pre-configured pivot charts. Clicking Endpoint Computers, Software Installed provides software installation record across the entire enterprise. Endpoint Computers agent information provides protection status of all endpoints in the entire environment. Endpoint Computers scan results also shows the information related to any scans that have been produced. Detections and threats are also imported. Quarantine information for the entire enterprise is provided, as well as suspicious activity, events, group data. Clicking on Other Objects exposes more options: tasks, exclusions, policies, schedules, and user information. The complete set of API calls is listed. Configuration and setup options allow for complete optimization, as well as the ability to be able to send reports. Simply upload an image for the logo, choose various parameters including tuning options, and click Generate. As you can see, a high-quality report is automatically created and emailed to any email addresses that are listed. In a simple 4-click process, you can create professional-looking reports that provide return on investment information. One view is the new Managed Service Provider specific offering from Malwarebytes. Using OneView, an MSP can manage all aspects of the customer lifecycle, from trial to deployment, billing, and for all available Malwarebytes products. A comprehensive dashboard provides OneView access across all of the managed sites. MSPs can see how many available licenses have been allocated across different products. There's also information such as tasks required and detections for the sites being managed. The managed service provider can drill into the status of any individual site, looking at a wide variety of different information, including licensing status, malware detection, and different health metrics. One-click single sign-on allows easy access to tenant accounts. A simple click returns you to the OneView console. Adding new accounts is extremely easy. Simply add the customer information and hit submit. Once the account is created, we can add different subscriptions such as products and terms, whether trialed or paid.